So, good evening. This is a podcast version of our live show that we're doing right now. If you want to join us on the live audio and visual show, you can go to pscp.tv/Life Nation and join us in the visual conversation as we talk about online learning tonight, the new pipeline. Now, this is a topic that is very dear to my heart because I myself, for the past 20 years, have been an educator, worked in the field of education, and I have seen how children can be railroaded into the prison industrial complex. And sometimes that starts off with the juvenile detention center complex. But we're finding out through this COVID and through the pandemic, the unintended consequences of trying to continue to teach students, trying to continue to offer education in an online setting, that it is leading to what I now call the new pipeline. And so whether or not that pipeline is school to prison or that pipeline is parent to prison, we are seeing the fallout of online learning. Now, what am I talking about? An article recently came out, and I'm going to take a moment to read a little bit of the article and then really jump into some of the issues that I don't think parents are fully aware of that may be happening in your school or in your county. I know most school districts are now up and running. Some school districts started in August with their back to school, and some school districts waited until after Labor Day to begin school. So like in our county, today was day one of school. So I want to take a moment to read about this 12-year-old who was suspended over a toy gun seen in virtual class. You got that right. I'm going to give it to you in details. This happened in Colorado Springs, Colorado. A 12-year-old boy who has been suspended for having a toy gun he never even brought to school. Isaiah Elliott attended Grand Mountain, a K-8 school in the Widefield district just south of Colorado Springs. On Thursday, August 27th, the seventh grader was attending an online art class when a teacher saw Isaiah flash a toy gun across his computer screen. The toy in question is a neon green and black handgun with an orange tip with the words "Zombie Hunter" printed on the side. The teacher notified the school principal, who suspended Isaiah for 5 days, and called the El Paso County Sheriff's Office to conduct a welfare check on the boy without calling his parents first. All kinds of violations here. And if I were the parents, I would definitely be involved in some sort of litigation process. But the teacher notified the school principal without calling the parents first, without even making an attempt at parent contact. It was really frightening and upsetting for me as a parent, especially as the parent of an African American young man. Given what's going on in our country right now, Isaiah's father, Curtis Elliott, shared in an exclusive interview with Fox 31. Curtis's wife, Danny Elliott, was equally furious with the school's decision to notify her only after deputies were on their way to the family's home. I mean, can we just name the cases, right? Breonna Taylor, Botham Shem Jean, all right? People who have been at home, sleeping, eating, minding their own business, and then all of a sudden they are inundated with a unexpected visit from law enforcement that could have gone sideways. For them to go as extreme as suspending him for 5 days, sending the police out, having the police threaten to press charges against him because they want to compare the virtual environment to the actual in-school environment is insane. The problem solvers obtained the sheriff's report, and it confirms the teacher said she, quote, assumed it was a toy gun, but was not certain. So in all of that, you chose to inform the principal and not check up with the parents themselves. As the mother stated, if her main concern was his safety, a 2-minute phone call to me or my husband could have easily alleviated the situation, to where I told them it was fake. Neither parent knew the school was recording their son's virtual class. This is something we're going to get into tonight, but said the district refused to provide the video to them when they requested it. So now you're recording my child and then you won't allow me to see the tape? How sway? A sheriff's deputy recorded the video on his body cam and showed it to the boy's father. Curtis Elliott told Fox 31 the video shows his son sitting at home on his sofa when he momentarily picks up the toy gun on the right side of where he's sitting and moves it to his left side, not realizing that in the process, his teacher and fellow students saw him move the gun across the computer screen. It would have been a lot easier for me to understand if my son had made a threat. The Elliots said their son was traumatized by deputies telling the 12-year-old his behavior could lead to, bada bing, bada bang, criminal charges, and might in the future if he were to do something similar again. He was in tears when the cops came. He was in tears. He was scared. We were all scared. I literally was scared for his life, fearful that deputies might overreact to having the school principal tell them that a young black boy was potentially armed with a gun. Administration with the school district refused an interview request from Fox 31, but emailed a statement. Privacy laws prevent us from sharing students' personal information, which includes disciplinary action. We follow all school board policies, whether we are in-person learning or distance learning. We take the safety of all our students and staff very seriously. Safety is always our number one priority. Isaiah's parents say safety was never a true issue, and suspending their son, who has been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and has learning disabilities, in no way helps his education. I definitely feel they crossed the line. They were extreme with their punishment, especially sending the police out and traumatizing my son and family. The district is now receiving dozens of critical comments on its Facebook page. In response, they deny their response was based on race or discrimination, but seem to acknowledge it recorded Isaiah Elliott's virtual class without parental permission, and that is the route I would go for litigation. The district wrote on its Facebook page, the platforms we use for distance learning have the feature to record classes for educational purposes. During our first week of school, we were still becoming familiar with the platform. It is not our current practice to record classes at this time. Parents will be notified if that changes. We will continue to support all families in our school to make sure they feel safe, respected, and educated. The parents say if the district wants to respect families, it should show common sense and call parents if there's a concern with a child's behavior. The virtual setting is not the same as the school setting. He did not take a toy gun to school. He is in the comfort of his own home. It turns there was another student, a friend of Isaiah's, who was in the home at the time who also handled the toy gun. According to the sheriff's report, that boy did point the toy gun at the computer screen and pull the trigger, but it's unclear if the boy knew he was being recorded or could be seen by his teacher. At the request of the school, deputies visited that boy and his mother as well. Fox 31 reached out to the boy's mother, but she has not returned our phone call. It's believed that that boy also received a 5-day suspension as well. Donnie and Curtis Elliott told Fox 31 their son could return to Grand Mountain School on Friday, September 4th, but they intend to transfer him to a charter or private school instead. Now, I do want to make note that sometimes the charter is actually more punitive than the public school. So they might want to rethink that consideration. So let's have the conversation. Let's get into it. I want to share a couple things as an educator and as someone who has been teaching online, some of the legality pieces and some of the things that parents may not be thinking about when their child is in remote learning. So go ahead and take a moment to share this broadcast out. Share it, please, with parents. Share it with your friends who have children who are doing remote learning, you are in essence opening your home up, opening your space up to the school. And so this is a part of unintended consequences of trying something new. All right, so let's talk about some things in terms of if your child is going to be learning from home. The first thing you can do is look at the school's policy concerning your child being on screen. Most counties have a policy that children do not have to have their cameras on. So if your child does not have to have their camera on during online learning, have them turn it off. That will save you a lot of problems with what the teacher can potentially see in your child's background. Now, if you are in a district where they require the child's camera to be on, then that means you have to, as a parent, do a little bit more to ensure that your child is not targeted in this way. You can remove distracting objects from behind your child. You probably don't want your child doing this online learning in their bedroom unless they have a desk in there, all right? Because most teachers want your child to be sitting upright at a table as if they were in school, because really they're supposed to be maintaining some sort of normalcy around their learning. So in a regular school setting, they're not necessarily laying on the floor or laying on a bed looking at a computer screen to learn. So you want to try to keep their learning environment as consistent with a regular on-site school as possible. All right. So if you haven't cleared a space for them, please clear the space. All right. They don't necessarily need to be sitting at a kitchen table, but if you have a kitchen table, one of those island counters, they can sit up, in the living room, somewhere where you can sort of keep your eyes on them. Because bedrooms with closed doors is probably not it. I'm trying to help somebody today, okay? So remove distracting objects. Make sure your child doesn't have toys around them during remote learning. All right? Here's another unintended consequence of having your child's camera on and having their microphone on. Again, most teachers are going to ask your child to mute their mic unless they're being called upon. So if your child does not mute their mic, then that means everybody in the class is going to hear your background noise. Your background noise could include profanity. It could include all kinds of language that the other students shouldn't be hearing and their parents don't want them to be subjected to. So make sure that your child is muting their mic unless they're being called on. Again, if your child is in a district where they're allowed to record, where teachers are allowed to record their session, that means whatever background noise that you are putting out is also a part of that official recording. Okay? So I want you to do two things. I want you to check the school board policy, check your school board policy around recording. For example, I know in my county, teachers are allowed to record the instruction portion of their class time. They're not supposed to be recording students on camera. They're not supposed to be recording student responses. They're only supposed to be recording the part of the lesson where they're giving instruction and showing how to move through a lesson. That's what they should be recording. But I do know that states and counties do have some different guidelines around that. So make sure you check your county's policy around recording. What should teachers be recording and what should they not be recording? Here's another thing. We know that in an online setting, there is a tendency sometimes for children to maybe take advantage of that space, right? Maybe type some inappropriate things in the chat box while instruction is going on. They can actually possibly be charged with things like internet bullying and cyberbullying. All right? So you're looking at, again, a whole other level of opportunity for your child to be targeted. So Pay attention to what your child is doing. I do know that some schools do allow the parents to observe inside of the Google Meet. So if you have, or Zoom or whatever your school is using. So if you have the ability to observe and be online while your child is online, I would encourage you to do that, at least for the first few weeks of school. The other piece is, even as you enter as a parent into a space where online learning is happening, as a parent, try to remember that you are not the teacher, and try not to correct anyone's child, and really try not to correct your own. I know that's going to be hard because with online learning, your child is right there. You want to jump in, you want to interject, you want to tell them what to do in the background. Again, try to allow the teacher to guide their class without your interruptions. I know that's hard for some. I know. An incident that happened on today. This is another unintended consequence. There were students from other schools, high schools, hacking into middle school Google Meets and sessions. They're still trying to figure out how to deal with that, because the way that these sessions are set up, anybody can give the code. So as long as you have the code, especially with Google Meets, you can pass that code on to another child, and that child can come into a space. I know today there was some reports where it was not just from school to school within the same county, but it was from other counties where high school students were hacking middle school student classes and putting things in the chat and harassing the students and disrupting the learning environment. So that's something new that is happening. And again, even if your child is in high school doing that, if they're doing it through their school email, there's going to be disciplinary consequences for it. So they haven't decided what they're going to do just yet, but there's probably going to be some unintended consequences of hacking another school's site. Again, I want you to think cyberbullying, cyber crimes that can now be added to your child because they decided that they wanted to have a little fun during school time. Also, last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to turn it over to my co-hosts, as I say. The last thing I want you to be reminded of, if you are unaware, that just like social workers, teachers are what's called mandatory reporters. They are mandatory reporters. What does that mean? It means that if a teacher sees something suspicious with your child, if they see your child holding a suspicious substance, if they see illegal substances in the background, if they see weapons or something that appears to be a real weapon, if they sense something suicidal is about to go down, if they witness child abuse, emotional, mental, physical, verbal abuse, they are mandated to report those things to the Department of Children and Families, or whatever your state calls your child protective services. They are mandatory reporters. They cannot see it and ignore it. And so if they're recording their class, and again, these things are caught on video and audio, they cannot look away. They cannot ignore it. They have to report it. Now, again, with the instance that we read this evening, that teacher should have at least asked the parents or notified the parent first about a potential weapon being in their home next to their child live online during online learning, right? But they jumped the gun, went straight to administration, and then there was the fallout. But you do have to realize and recognize that by law, teachers are mandatory reporters. And if they don't report certain things, they can stand to lose their teaching license. All right. So I hope that I have given you some things to think about. I hope you will take this seriously because, again, Black and brown children, especially, are being targeted. Black and brown children, especially, have detention rates and suspension rates and expulsion rates 2 to 3 times above the average. And we, as adults, as parents, as caretakers, caregivers, we don't want to add to those things. We don't want to be the cause of school to prison pipeline. We don't want to be the cause of something being added to a record because we weren't paying attention to the environment. We didn't set the proper environment. We didn't set the proper example. And now our child might be paying for something that they didn't have control over in the background, but it just happened to get caught on record. So I want you to consider those things, think about those things, and let's all do better. And let's also help our children and students to be successful this school year. We already have enough going on with COVID-19, and we have enough going on with racial injustice as it is with COVID-19. So we don't need to add to it. This is the breakdown. I hope that you will share this video. Those of you who are listening to the podcast, we're going to be signing off. If you want to join us for the rest of the conversation, you can join us at pscp.tv/Life Nation. And I'm going to leave that address down below. Join us for the live conversation.